Welcome to the ancient village of Worth Matravers in the Purbeck Hills of South Dorset. Our village is a popular destination for walkers and climbers and for anyone who wants to simply sit and enjoy the wonderful views. It's also renowned for its Purbeck stone, with several quarries in the area carrying on this historic tradition. This is the story of the restoration of our church, St Nicholas of Myra, which has been a part of village life for over 900 years. Each year we welcome many visitors who are captivated by the church's peaceful atmosphere, simplicity and beauty. Over the centuries, St Nicholas has seen good and bad times. The last major refurbishment was carried out by the Victorians in the mid to late 19th century. The building was inspected by the church architect in 2019 and the report didn't raise any serious issues beyond the usual wear and tear items. Unfortunately, soon after, the COVID-19 pandemic struck and the church had to be closed for lockdown. Once the COVID restrictions eased in September 2021, we were able to get back into the church and address the items raised by the earlier report. We put up scaffold, started pointing the loose tiles and removing plants that had taken root in the gaps. In the places we opened up, it was obvious that the tile supports had rotted and fixing nails were either corroded or non-existent. The situation was far more serious than we thought and would need considerable funding to fix the problem. As we had the scaffolding in place, we decided to carry out the other work detailed in the 5-year inspection and temporarily patch the roof so the church could stay open. The tiles were likely to slide down onto the churchyard, so we put up tapes and added signage to keep the people at a safe distance from the outside of the church. As we hoped to resume services, we also had to consider additional measures to ensure that the church remained safe to use. We knew that the ceiling plaster was probably unsafe, so we put up a suitable safety fall net on the structure in the nave that was fixed to the roof beams, so that any loose debris would be caught. We left the chancel without netting and closed it off to reduce costs. We then upgraded the original hazard tapes to a professional grade safety fencing to keep people at a suitable safe distance should the worst happen. Reinforcement was also fitted to the interior of the porch in case loose tiles fell onto it from the roof above. The work was quickly turning into a substantial project, so to manage it properly we formed a dedicated committee to oversee everything. We didn't realise then just how many meetings and how much time it would take to see the project through.
Yeah, James, all you.
Once a month, the project team met around Liz's kitchen table. Her delicious cakes were certainly a big incentive to attend.
Do help self.
Yes.
Any questions on?
Our Worth CCT chairman Hugh took on the initial task of making the diocese faculty applications to allow the repairs to go ahead.
We discovered the church roof was in need of repair. What particular permissions did you have to gain from the church in order to carry out the work?
Well, the first permission I had to get was a faculty from the Diocesan Advisory Committee, the DAC, in Salisbury. And that took about 7 months with numerous questions, not just about the church and the church roof, but about the village and about the locality and all sorts of other things. Yeah. So it was quite a lengthy procedure, you could say.
Yes.
The second organisation we had to get permission from was the Dorset Council.
Yes.
Because we wanted to remove the old chimney which was there. And that was no longer required because we no longer have a boiler, so that was a relatively straightforward procedure.
Yes.
We had to go through that procedure because we were a Grade 1 listed building. And the third was the bat survey, which we found there was evidence of bats in the tower, but not in the church roof,
yes.
Fortunately.
Crawling around in the tower there, I remember.
I hate to think, quite honestly. I don't know, it must have taken 2 or 3 months, I suppose. So I suppose you could say that the whole procedure took very nearly a year.
At the same time, we began discussing fundraising and produced quick, simple handouts for the benefice to use to get things moving. The various initiatives were beginning to multiply.
The starting point was Heritage Lottery, and we felt that if we were able to secure a grant from them, that it would encourage other trusts to have confidence that the project was going to have legs and would be delivered. So we were successful with the Heritage Lottery bid, and on the back of that we received funding from the National Churches Trust, the Benefact Trust, and on the back of that we also got individual gifts and donations and a significant contribution from church funds as well.
Yes.
But it was the Heritage Lottery bid that got us started.
It definitely was, yeah.
So I believe we submitted a bid for £250,000, and we were very grateful to receive £249,000 and a few pennies. So that was a really significant moment, and we knew once we'd achieved that there was every chance the project would be successful in raising additional funds.
So Hugh, we know James covered the Heritage Lottery Fund application. There were obviously other charities that we went to, and I understand you handled them. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, James did the lottery grant and one or two others. Basically, I did two organisations. One is Dorset Historic Churches Trust, and the other is the Erskine Mouton Charitable Trust. The Erskine Mouton Charitable Trust is a trust fund run by the diocese. And I dealt with those two because I'd had previous dealings with them and I knew the people concerned and that sort of thing. In fact, we got an initial grant from them, and we were very lucky in getting two subsequent grants from both those organisations. So they topped up on their original grant when they knew that we had additional work to complete with the replacement of the rafters.
Over the following 2 years, we became regulars at all the local fetes. Thanks to the generous support of villagers and visitors, donations steadily came in, boosted by proceeds from our own Worth fete and other fundraising events. The donation kiosk in the church proved popular with congregation and visitors, making contributions easier.
The project received an early boost when Charles O'Reilly, one of the team, approached renowned artist Nicholas Healy Hutchinson to create a painting of the church that could be raffled.
The whole process starts with sketches and things. Yes. The first thing is to find the angle of where I wanted to paint the church from, and I looked around, and it was a matter of getting various elements into the picture that I wanted, and one of the elements was I really wanted to get a little bit of the sea in, because I feel that we are sort of quite close to the sea here, and as you can see over here, that I've just managed to get a little bit of the sea in, and also I wanted to try and get as much of the church and the church roof in as possible. Yes. And it's very nice, the church from the other side, actually, and particularly when the light is on it. But I thought to make an interesting picture, I was only going to get a part of the church, and I wanted to get the whole church.
It was in shadow for a lot of time.
Yes. On the morning I was there was this lovely low sunlight. I think it was quite a wintry picture. So it had various elements that I thought would probably make quite a nice painting.
The interesting thing about the painting you get from this angle is the sense of the church in the landscape and as being a central part of the village. When you look at it from the village side, it's forming a sort of wall on the north side of the village, and it's not so included. This is a church you can see from the sea. It's a big part of the landscape and a big part of the community. It was snippets of each of those different conversations that led to the idea of doing producing a painting, and of how we could monetize that most effectively. The idea is that we could have a raffle at an entry level that was suitable for everybody and could involve the whole community, and raise serious amounts of money. So we set a ticket limit of £20.
More than 700 tickets were sold at £20 each. Funds were further increased by selling prints, postcards and greeting cards of the painting that were sold in the church and at fetes.
And then at the end we threw a party in the village hall. Again, tickets were about £20 a head. Various people donated food and drink, and we had a great party, and we drew the prize. And the prize winner has a link to Worth, but actually it lives in Australia at the moment. It is extraordinarily difficult to raise money, and you have to balance the amount of effort that every member of the committee put in to generate funds to generate a worthwhile event and a worthwhile amount of money.
Architects Crickmay Stark, based in Dorchester, are appointed to oversee the project, and Tudor Rose Masonry and Conservation in Weymouth to carry out the work.
With generous support from the Heritage Lottery Fund, we raised £400,000, enough to move forward with the next phase of restoration. On the 5th of September 2022, we received formal permission from the diocese to proceed with the work. At last we were on our way.
The 18th of September 2023, the first day of the project. The first task is to offload the site facilities. Time is not ideal as BT is installing a data link through the centre of the village past the church and restricting the road at the same time. Although access is tight, with some juggling and cooperation, the heavy site security container and other vital services are located. I couldn't know it at the time, but this was just the start of a long and demanding journey. Construction of the massive scaffolding can begin in earnest. Whilst the scaffolding is being erected, the masons can take the opportunity to remove the redundant Victorian chimney. As the stone is still in excellent condition, it is eventually sold to a local who will build a barbecue. This completely encloses the entire church. It will be the size of a 3-storey office building with roof and side screens and will dominate the village. Work can then continue without breaks due to the bad weather. It will take 4 men around a month to erect and require more than 30,000 litres of water as ballast, which is kindly supplied by a neighbour as we have no water supply at the church. The road is now closed due to the cabling works, so all available road space can be used and the movement is safer and easier. At least the cabling works has not yet reached the church before work is completed. Whilst tasks continue outside, the interior work begins with carefully packaging and protecting the various monuments and artefacts. The pews are also vulnerable as they will be just below the interior scaffold. The statue of St Nicholas is also protected and is removed to the safety of the vestry. This is the first time the artefact has moved in a very long time. We also take the opportunity to remove the very ancient redundant Victorian central heating system. An important part of the interior work involves the specialist dismantling of the organ and its pipes and storing the various parts out of harm's way. The largest pipes will be stored on site, the rest are taken into storage. Once dismantled, a cocoon will be constructed around its frame to prevent ingress of dust and damp. The scaffold work is complete, and on the 1st of November 2023, the first stone of the project is removed. As the tiles are removed, Each is inspected for goodness, its position recorded and then safely stacked on the scaffold, ready for reuse. Tiles must be removed in an ordered way, with tiles removed from both sides of the church simultaneously, or the roof structure will be stressed by the uneven load. Once the chancel tiles are removed, the nave is stripped. Around 40% of the tiles will be found unfit for further use and will be replaced. Once all the tiles are removed, the work can begin to remove the laths and plaster. This generates a massive amount of waste, so extra manpower is brought in to help. The debris is taken to storage at NT Western Farm for removal by skip. Dirty work for the team. It is so dusty that it is impossible to shoot video during the work and requires special protection equipment. It is obvious that holes have been cut in the laths at some point, probably to add skylights in an oil lamp age. The star-painted ceiling over the altar is protected during the works. The ceiling is probably Victorian and shows patching and repainting over the years. At Christmas, work is suspended until the new year, when a structural engineer will inspect the rafters for reuse. Some rot in the wood that's 170 years old is expected, and plans are made to reinforce the structure with steel. The mood is good for the rectification and relaying of the tiles and membrane in the new year. The structural survey is carried out in mid-January 2024 after the Christmas delays. The report is disastrous for the project. The 100 rafters are so internally rotten on the top side from damp passing through the ceiling laths that they're not worth retaining. The first real setback, and a very major deviation from the contract. The mood is bleak.
So later on, when we had the problem with the rafters, you had to proceed in exactly the same fashion, did you?
Well, it wasn't quite the same, but it was a bit of a nightmare, certainly. What we had to do is to apply to the DAC for an amendment to the original faculty. And we had visions of that taking maybe 2 or 3 months. In actual fact, we got the amendment through within about a month or so. But that was, I think, largely because we leaned on them fairly heavily because we needed to get on with the work and it was going to cost us a lot of additional money if we didn't get the faculty fairly soon. Also because the architects were very good in following up and pressing the DAC for an answer. But yes, it came through in about a month or so.
The masons get to work removing the rotten wood. A massive quantity of debris is generated that must be removed from the scaffold and away from site as there is no on-site storage. As all the rafters will now have to be replaced, we carefully remove the star ceiling and store sections for future reference. Each piece is very carefully photographed, removed and stored in a moisture-proof container for future reference. Signatures of 2 local families, Benfield and Bauer, are also discovered. The 5-metre-long rafters are cut into sections for handling. Sacks of cut rafters are taken to Western Farm and locals are encouraged to help themselves to reduce disposal costs. You may see some burning in the hearth at the Square and Compass. All the old lead goes for recycling. We raised £500 for the 371 kilos we have removed. The costs of the overrun on the contract are now beginning to bite in other areas. The scaffolding is costing around £3,500 a month in hire charges, and the contractors will have to find work to fill in for the new year until March.
On the 20th of March 2024, 100 new rafters begin to arrive on site in batches and are unloaded. Each rafter is 5.5 metres in length, weighs 100 kilograms and requires 3 men to handle safely. The balance of rafters are stored locally at NT Western Farm for future use. After a couple of false starts, a quick and safe method for lifting the rafters is discovered. The rafter is first drilled to accept a fixing so that it can be coupled to an electric hoist. It is then carefully lifted to the pivot.
A scaffold plank is then used to ease it up and over the bar. As the lift continues, the rafter comes to the horizontal. The rafters are then loaded into the building and stacked in a space in the roof ready to be sanded and stained before installation. As the work begins, the architects discuss the technical issues of processing and fitting the rafters with the masons.
Because we've got a running length, overrun length down on the bottom of its mouth, so if that wall plate moves in and out, the over length of the timber can be adjusted when we do the final cut. We now have our long jig, which has got our wall plate datum line, it's got a post hole point, and then when we got our new marking, which has also included any plates that are in the way, and then you've got your ridge purling. We work with the bow, so when we bolt it down, it pulls it in straight, and you get the weight of the tile also holding it in straight.
Each rafter has to be cut to fit the existing roof structure, so a system of templates is used to ensure each will fit perfectly first time. This minimises the handling and the need to remove, adjust and refit. Rafter fitting begins in the nave, followed by the chancel.
Working.
The installation starts in May 2024 and continues into late July.
So we get the right post for each rafter. You've got to do lines up and lines down, or it's the turbine masonry. So you don't twist your templates around the thing. Straighter you get them, all the better. You're never going to get that shape particularly, so you just trim one off a bit. Bit of healing. And then you're on the pencil lines, John?
Yeah, I'm within the lines, nice. Yeah, they should be clear by the time I clamp down. I'm in line.
You guys?
Yeah.
That's it. You hanging on the... Yep. These uprights will have to be filled, sanded and wedged up into place. Self-tapping stainless steel bolts, and there's 600 of them.
Then we just belt sand these ends to get them nice and level. And then we sand them with a vibro sander. And then we stain them with the Osmo.
By completion, rafter replacement has added extra costs of £95,000 and an overall delay of 7 months to the project. Once this is complete, the work begins to fit the wooden laths that will support the plaster ceiling. These are specially grown in a wood in Sussex. Next, the special, very expensive bat-friendly membrane is installed. This is designed to avoid nesting bats' claws from becoming entangled. This is very important for pipistrelle bats in particular, who normally nest in small roof crevices and in spaces under tiles. Wooden battens support the finished membrane until the tiles are laid. The work has now taken over a year to this point, and the weather is good, so the masons have started growing lettuces on site to add to their sandwiches. Cassandra, the resident collared dove, has nested in the scaffold and produced 2 lots of eggs, 3 of which we believe have survived and flown. Work begins to start laying the 1700 tiles towards the end of August 2024, almost a year from our start date.
That worked.
Whilst permission was being sought from the DAC to change the rafters, the specification for retiling the roof has changed in line with the latest Historic England guidance. Originally, tiles would have been laid in the Purbeck style with pointing in between. However, as the roof now has a breathable membrane, ventilation is required to remove the moisture build-up that will rot the wooden structure. This increases the time and effort taken to prepare and lay the tiles, as must all be regular height, width and thickness, and fit together accurately to provide a leak-proof covering.
23.5 maximum, so we chop the top off so it fits underneath our rafter. So it'll be there. So that just takes these higher spots out, which enables the tile to sit nice and flat. You want to come over and have a look at these, and we'll just lay a couple of these out.
Tile cutting and preparation is required on each and every tile. A skilled job to ensure the tile fits and is not broken and wasted in the process. Lead is formed and fitted for the gutters on either end of the roof sections. The actual gutter is made up of several parts that must fit together accurately so that the roof does not leak. The lead is then fixed to the building with weatherproof mortar seal. Once the tiles are processed, they are fixed to the battens using stainless steel screws. Around 40% of the roof tiles require considerable work or are scrapped, so large tiles are trimmed and fitted further up the roof, and new tiles brought in to replace the failed larger ones. By the time the roof is complete, 40 tons of tiles will have been laid. The last tile on the ridge is fitted in the second week of April 2025, 18 months after the first was removed.
As the tile laying work nears completion, work starts inside with the plastering of the chancel.
Is this about to drop those big bags of sand over?
The materials required are delivered to site ready to start work.
Sand. It's a course, semi-course called plastering sand, rendering sand.
The plaster mix consists of a number of elements, and each must be mixed in precise quantities and water added to give the correct consistency.
I must be getting it right. That's it for him when he wants it.
In order to keep the application flowing, the masons assist with the mixing. The first plaster is applied on the 6th of January 2025. A mortar mix must be forced between the gaps between the last to firmly fix the material. Plastering the ceilings will eventually require 5 tons of plaster. A first coat is applied and allowed to become firm, then a second is applied followed by the finishing skim coat. Mortar plaster mix does not fully set for a considerable time, so plastering of the nave must wait until the tiling work is complete in case vibration loosens the fix. The long drying time also introduces a delay before painting can begin. This is a very thin mix of lime mortar and water, so at least 3 coats are applied in order to provide a reasonable result. This is very time-consuming work and takes around 2 weeks to complete. Applying the finish requires a certain amount of gymnastics. The request for removal is placed on the 14th of April 2025. After some considerable encouragement, the scaffolders finally arrive on site on the 28th of April and begin work. The opening deadline of June the 8th, rededication by Bishop Karen, is fast approaching. The removal of the scaffold roof supports and the roofing sheets over the tiles causes the most concern. One slip and the tiles underneath will be damaged. A nail-biting day, but the job is completed without a single problem. Mason Richard carefully watched the whole procedure from the scaffold from start to finish. A long day. The team work on, removing the mass of sheets, poles, tanks and other material. The churchyard is a very dangerous place at this time. Things are beginning to drag for the masons, as there are limited tasks that can be completed with the interior scaffold in place and the outside a no-go. It is decided to concentrate all the scaffolders on the interior, and a team of 4 managed to remove the entire structure in a day. This is a massive leap forward and confirms the opening date is possible. Scaffold company finally finishes on the 29th of May. The churchyard is clear and ready for the next phase. The entire church is covered in a fine film of stone dust from the work. Meticulous cleaning begins in the chancel and then continues into the nave. The pews are carefully unpacked, cleaned and polished, and the window glass is cleaned for the first time in many years. This is the most striking feature of the work. Once the cleaning is complete, it's time to place the statue of St. Nicholas back in its alcove. It is cleaned, polished and replaced nearly 3 years after it was removed. The time has come to wake up the organ. The masons have removed the protective cocoon, so everything is ready for assembly. The organ appears in good order and not damaged by the winter damp, so the protection has been successful. Andrew has stored the smaller pipes, so these are unloaded for fitting. The components are carefully assembled. Success. Meanwhile, work continues in the churchyard with the removal of the last of the equipment, tools and debris. They don't forget their champagne, presented in thanks on behalf of the village by the site team.
everything just about fitted into their van. The grass has been severely damaged by the work and the enclosed scaffolds, so the masons start to reseed the worn areas. Thanks to some fortunate downpours and attention by Mason John, the seeds quickly take and the areas begin to green again. We have promised to continue the watering. The recommissioning is finally complete, and a last site meeting is held with the architects to inspect the work. The masons officially hand over the satisfactorily completed church back to the site team and the village over tea and cakes on the morning of June the 4th, 2025. It is an emotional meeting. A further emotional meeting follows when the masons clear their final items, give the grass one last water, and for the first time Steward Liz walks round the completed church she has missed for so long.
Well, you know, coming from I've lost a business partner out of it. We had a few traumas. But it shows off the whole property, well, the building, the church, you know.
Yeah, and I mean you see it from both angles as you come through.
As part of the project, a new name sign has been produced at the Burngate Stone Centre by Anna Bowen, a renowned local artist. It was carved completely by hand and took several weeks to produce. The sign is made of pond freestone and looks very striking at the front gate and complements the new roof. The completed church must now be rededicated before use, and a communion service is arranged at Pentecost on the 8th of June with Bishop Curran from Sherborne. A procession of people, including Mason John and his family, first passes round the church, and the service can then begin. Around 80 people attend. The church is packed. The service is followed by a lunch held in the village hall provided by the Grateful Village, including free beer provided by Charlie and the Square and Compass staff. A demonstration of stone carving organised by the Burngate Centre artists follows. We are all fascinated by the skill of the carvers and the techniques involved. It is early July 2025 and the work to replace the roof at St Nicholas is complete. This has been an exciting, demanding and unforgettable journey. The masons became part of village life and friendships were formed that will last well beyond the project. The community, the parish, national and local charities and the dedicated roof team all came together to bring St Nicholas Church back into service. It has truly been a shared achievement and one that none of us will forget.